Great. Thank you so much. Okay, so welcome to the September Block Captain Orientation. We're delighted to have you all here tonight. My name is Pam Keon. Our master webmaster is Bob Hemstock, who's been helping everyone come into the Zoom. And I'm also going to be working this evening with Ashley Rafshay, who is a block captain from Alto Sutton and has been involved from the ground level up on helping put that NRG together and has done lots of these orientations. So we're delighted that you're all here tonight. I think, Bob, how many people did we have registered for this evening?
Close to 60. And let me remind everyone, we will be keeping tabs on the chat feature, and feel free to ask questions. And if we could wait till a break or later on to answer them, we'll look at them, or at the end. Or if we think it's something more important, that we'll let Pam or the speaker know, and we'll ask the question right away.
Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started. There's our beautiful mountain town on this picture, and I always look at it and cannot help but think about how gorgeous it is and how devastating the 1929 fire was, and how we have not had an event like that since then. And on a day like today, as I watched the AQIs go up over 100 again, and looked at the evacuation map in Sonoma and Napa, I thought, well, there's no time like the present for us to get prepared and get involved. So this evening, we're going to go over a couple of things. We're going to be moving fairly quickly. There's plenty of information and there's time to learn it all. Please, as Bob said, feel free to put your questions in the chat, and we'll try to get to everything we can this evening. If we cannot, we'll follow up with you afterwards, so don't worry. We're going to be talking about NRGs, neighborhood response groups, what they are, why they are, how they work, and then we'll talk about block captains, which is why you are all here, and what your responsibilities are and how you fit into the NRG program. So NRGs, neighborhood response groups. These are grassroots groups. These are groups that are volunteer-based. They're often associated with a municipality, like under the auspices of a city council, or affiliated with the local fire department. And sometimes they operate independently. And they are usually almost completely dependent on volunteer efforts and labor. They're all about the neighbor helping neighbor concept. This is about reaching across to your neighbors, getting to know your neighbors, strengthening bonds. The cohesion in a neighborhood is directly related to positive outcomes in some kind of emergency or disaster. We all know, we all talk about, the old days when everybody knew one another, and everybody knew everyone's kids on the street, and everyone went to the same schools and did the same things. And we all know our lives have changed dramatically in the last generation or so. And I hear people talk about, well, I drive the car into the garage and I never see anyone else in the neighborhood. And we all know the reasons why. And what we also know is that if we don't work against that, we become isolated, and it's difficult in times of difficulty to have someone to reach out to and lean on for assistance. So this is all about building social cohesion across groups of people who live near one another. We have a lot of people who live within city limits, City of Mill Valley this evening, and we also have a lot of people who are coming from unincorporated 94941 in Tam Valley. And it's interesting because The two NRG programs that have now come together actually started somewhat independently of one another and didn't really know about one another. And so I'm going to be talking about both this evening, and if there are any differences between them, I'll point those out. Fundamentally, they're not significant differences, but just so that we're clear. In City of Mill Valley, we've chosen a model where we've divided the city into 8 NRGs. Each NRG has 600 to 800 homes in it. And the NRG itself is divided into clusters. And those clusters can have 40 to 300 homes. In Tian Valley, we have divided into 11 NRGs that are smaller NRGs. They're anywhere from 50 to 350 addresses in an NRG. And those are influenced by topography, the sizes. In both, we aim for 10 to 20 block captains per cluster. And a cluster is a group of homes that are nearby one another. And we know that sometimes that has to be modified. If you might live someplace where the houses are spread somewhat apart and they're all up or down very steep driveways, having 20 houses in your cluster may not make sense for you. And so that number may be modified, but the ideal is 10 to 20 per cluster. And what we're doing is we're building a network of communication so that we can respond well in a disaster when we know that our public safety personnel may not be able to get to us right away. How do we get to our neighbors and get information to those people who can help us? So we always want to give a big thanks to Central Marin. Central Marin, starting in Corte Madera 10 years ago, a wonderful couple, Lee and John Howard, decided to start a neighborhood response group, and we stand on their shoulders. They did all the hard work. They basically pretty much invented the model, and we have benefited so much from their lessons learned. And we're also able to see where they have gotten in 10 years and realize that we have to stick with this. Our efforts, we're building, we're new to this, and they show us where we can get to. Again, in the idea of social cohesion and neighbors helping neighbors, many of us also live adjacent to non-residence areas. We may live near downtown Mill Valley, near stores. We may live near churches or synagogues. This is about getting all our residences together and then also connecting with the rest of the fabric of our community. And I also want to say, right now while I'm doing this, I can only see a few of you. And one of the people I see is Jim Derich. And I just want to shout out to Homestead. And I'm sorry I didn't mention Homestead earlier, because Homestead Valley is a wonderfully organized Firewise community. And now they are working on adding the NRG component. So thanks, Jim. So why do we do this? Again, it's about social cohesion, it's about resiliency. And it is about getting out there and getting to know our neighbors and getting our neighbors to know one another. Why? We want to know in a time of disaster or emergency, who are the people who are resources to us? Who might have medical training? Who might have a generator? Who might have a chainsaw? Let's say a tree has come down in an earthquake and it's blocking the only road out. Does someone in the neighborhood have a chainsaw? It's great if we know that in advance. Also knowing what our hazards are or what our liabilities are. My neighbor may have mobility issues and he may not be able to get out in time of disaster on his own. So knowing that and helping my neighbor plan ahead is really important. And again, I'll say this a number of times. We can't say it enough to one another. We're so used to having our public safety professionals accessible to us. And it's so hard to imagine what it would be like to not pick up the phone and dial 911 because the infrastructure has been so damaged that there are no phones, there are no workable roads, and that we're on our own for a time. And I think that's a very difficult concept for many of us to hold, but we really have to think about that and what that means and why this is so important that we be prepared. So here are some of the things that we try to prepare to respond to. Of course, on everyone's mind right now is fire. We've got some pictures of that. Flooding is also an issue. And as we know, some of us live in low-lying areas that can be very seriously impacted by flooding and sea level rise. Earthquake, we've been very fortunate in the last 30 years, but that picture reminds us of how dramatic it can be. And in the lower, I think it's in your lower right-hand corner, I think, that's a picture taken last year during the PSPS, Public Safety Power Shutoff. And that was taken looking down at the Mill Valley Rec Center when it was serving as a refuge for people to come and charge their devices and to be able to get air conditioning if it was hot. And obviously now with COVID, that adds a layer of complexity to things. We probably wouldn't see people sitting so close to one another. The rec center has functioned already this season as a cooling center when the temperatures became so unbearably high. And we are now, because of public safety power shutoffs, we're incorporating that into our thinking and into our awareness of what are the impacts of the power shutoffs, how might they affect some of our neighbors, and helping them to think ahead about those. So who guides the NRGs? This is a great picture. This is a drill. These are block captains reporting into their incident command. If you are within city limits, your block captain is the very heart of this program. The block captain is responsible for the cluster of homes. And then the block captain reports into the steering committee for that NRG. And then from there, the NRGs are all represented on the NRG Advisory Council, which is responsible to the City Council. In Tam Valley, we have a slightly different model where because there is no City Council, the block captains are responsible for their cluster, and then the NRGs report into the Tam Valley Network Steering Committee. We try to have the goal is to have 2 drills per year. Drills are so important for us. We don't want the actual disaster to be our first time out. And so practicing makes a huge difference. And for each of us, that can look different at this point in time because we're in the building stages. So your practice drill, and drills take place on the time change days. So that's the first Sunday in November and the first Sunday in March. Your drill might look like this. In advance of the drill, you distribute to everyone in your cluster an OK help sign that they can put in their window or on their front door. You let them know you're going to do the drill at 10 o'clock on Sunday, the 1st of November. And at 10 o'clock, everyone's supposed to put up their sign. As block captain, you walk your cluster, you have your clipboard or your phone or whatever you're using, and you check off each address and whether they had an OK sign or a help sign in their window, and that may be it. You may choose to have a more ambitious drill, and we can talk about that more now. But just the idea of getting into the discipline of practicing on a regular basis. We also have trainings. This is obviously the entry-level training, and somebody at the beginning of our meeting asked about the upcoming radio communication training, and that is Bob on October 16th, 15th. You're muted.
On the 14th.
On the 14th.
Wednesday the 14th.
I was getting there. So we have lots of different trainings, and we will talk about that a little bit more in a few moments. We wanted to show you these maps so you have an understanding of the relationship of the NRGs to one another. This is a map of the city of Mill Valley. And the city of Mill Valley NRGs are determined by what are called the mutual threat zones. And these were developed by public safety and help them understand how, when they're working together to respond to things, where they're going. And you can see the list of zones over on the left-hand side. In Tam Valley, we have a slightly different map because Tam Valley has mutual threat zones, but it also has the perimeter of Tamalpais Community Services District. And so that informed how the Tam Valley map was done. And now I'm going to turn it over to Ashley and ask her to take over from here. And Ashley, do you want me or Bob to move the slides for you since you're on your phone?
Actually, that would be great. Thank you. Either one of you. I'll just say next slide and whoever gets to it faster. So I will kick off. Thank you everyone for joining today. It's really exciting to see such a great turnout. I am excited to expand this program into Tam Valley, especially since you guys are already actively engaged in this. It makes that a lot easier for all of us. And then the great thing that we get to know is that there are other groups like ours that are working on the same things with the same goals, and that we can really collaborate and have best practices, and we can learn what works for this area. So I'm here to tell you about block captains. This is a block captain orientation. Block captains, they are a critical piece to the neighborhood response group. And so in this orientation is designed to get you more acquainted to what those roles and responsibilities and the expectations that we would have for what a block captain does. There's no official role in an evacuation. Block captains take care of themselves and their families. However, the primary role of a block captain, and what we are just so eager to hit you on the ground and get you started, or to just continue to have you facilitate your neighborhood response group, the primary role is in the preparation phase, connecting with your residents, connecting with folks in your neighborhood clusters, helping them to talk through some really core concepts, how to prepare their family for emergencies, discuss ways to harden their homes to survive wildfires, helping neighbors to create a plan for all different types of emergencies. Block captains collect basic information from their neighbors to facilitate the CERT and incident command post in the response phase to an emergency. With that information, the incident command can help identify those individuals who are most vulnerable in the community so that the response can be triaged to be efficient, effective, and to really be catered to those who need it the most. Block captains work in teams of 2, and we would share resident clusters of approximately 10 to 20 homes. However, keep in mind, as Pam mentioned, not all Southern Marin NRG programs look the same. In TAM, where neighbors are spread out along the mountain, your cluster would be roughly 5 to 8 homes, defined both by the topography and the neighborhood culture that you are engaging in. This is, if you learn anything other than sign up for Alert Marin and get yourself prepared for those emergency alerts, this is the take-home message. The community building that is achieved in preparing for an emergency, this is the critical to the success of the recovery phase. Pam talked about resiliency. So I will stress again that prepared communities are more resilient. So even if you have a goal of collecting all of your neighborhood contact information and that goal falls short, the effect that you're building in your community will far outlast whatever plan that we are jumpstarting at this moment. And I really want to encourage and engage you on that level so that you're not defeated before you even start. Every stage takes practice. Even these trainings take practice. Practice, practice, practice. This is why we do drills twice a year. Pam went into really what we're looking at in a social distancing version of a drill. Just distributing your okay or your help sign and checking in on your clusters to see if the information that you have on hand for them is up to date. We also practice in our drills the communication network. Now, this is everything from the radio networking that will be occurring in your neighborhood, or it's everything from the command post, how our block captains report information to the NRG command teams, how the NRG command teams escalate that to CERT teams and other first response teams, so that our community can really engage and take that leadership and take the onus of surviving an emergency. So really the core concept of what we're practicing is not just the network and how to be prepared in an emergency situation, but also to practice how we would be reporting information about our neighborhood and what that need is in the vulnerable community member. Now, there is no obligation of a block captain to be trained in first aid. However, I want to stress that knowledge is power, and in an emergency, the more a community can be prepared to respond, the better they are suited to survive the event. Therefore, we encourage all of our block captains to take the CERT training and or FADER training. And I know this is a difficult ask, especially since during COVID, these trainings have been placed on hold. So for those of you who are not familiar with these terms, CERT is Community Emergency Response Training. They're starting to create a hybrid model, and I'll talk about that a little later. FADER is First Aid Disaster Response. The choice to use the training in an emergency is entirely up to you, but we would hope that anyone who decides to help or respond to an emergency is prepared with the adequate training. Go ahead, next slide, please. Preparedness review. Thank you, Bob. So we live, you saw the photos earlier, we live in an area prone to wildfires, prone to floods, earthquakes, high winds, and now we're contending with power shutoffs, unhealthy air quality, and a viral pandemic. Not to mention homeschooling. Don't get me started on that. With that, I really want to take this opportunity to thank each of you for attending this orientation and really stepping up in this community leadership role to help your neighborhood respond and become more resilient to these emergencies. I think you all deserve to pat yourself on the back. This is the first step of engagement, and I'm just really pleased to see this turn out. So now let's just get down to the nuts and bolts in the essence of time. I don't mean to wax poetic here. What we are discussing, block captains, and what your neighborhood cluster and your role as a block captain, what that looks like. As you engage your neighbors to prepare, we hope that you remind them to stay connected by signing up for those alerts, Alert Marin, Nixle, PG&E power shutoffs. If you don't have links to how you sign up for these, take a look at our website. It's forgive me, I have it on my link. It's nrgmillvalley.org. Bob will be reviewing a website crawl pretty shortly. So that's a great one-stop shop to click and sign up for all of these alerts. Talk with your neighbors, help them identify where their gas and their water shutoff valves are, what they will include or need to include in a go bag, and ask them if they need special assistance in an emergency. That's really, people are often not always open in what kind of needs that they have. It's hard to ask for help. And so that's why it's so important that we create a community sense in this neighborhood response group, so that your community and your clusters are more apt to share information, because it doesn't feel like a stranger. It feels like just exactly what you are. You're their neighbor and you're there to help. During an emergency, we're often asked to shelter in place. Now, when we first kicked off this orientation training, that was a very new concept. Now under COVID, folks understand what that means, but it's really still important to remind your neighborhood clusters as a block captain what shelter in place looks like. Help your neighbor discuss how they can prepare 5 to 7 days worth of food and water for every member of their household. And don't forget pets. Remember, your power may be shut, so keep your flashlights and your lanterns on hand and ready to use. Ambient light is so critical to mental health during a prolonged power outage. And under COVID and a pandemic, we already are on edge. We're already heightened in this. So it's really important to do the preparedness in advance, so that we can act as humans and we can panic a little bit, but know that we are prepared and we have a plan, and it makes it so much easier to respond. So remind your neighbors, be prepared with their out-of-network contacts, their out-of-area contacts, and stay connected with the Alert Marin and Nixle for the evacuation orders. Also, I'd like to point out that there are resources. There are resources in Marin and Southern Marin and Mill Valley for charging stations, cooling stations on a hot day. We have no questions asked food donations. So these are resources that I'd really like to share and hope that you point out to your neighbors, especially if you find that they may fall into that vulnerable category. Red flag days. Today is a red flag day. Red flag days remind us to check our go bags, make sure all of our supplies are up to date, our medicines are there, that we gas up the car, we charge our cell phones, we have our shoes nearby, and that we're prepared to leave ASAP if necessary. Don't forget to mask up Mill Valley, bring your N95 mask for fire particulates. I'd like to stress that we do encourage N95. This is really important for wildfires, which is not necessarily what individuals have been using during the COVID pandemic. And so it's really important in your fire go bag that you have the appropriate mask. Next slide, please. So some evacuation guidelines. Evacuation. This is an easier concept to teach to folks like you who live on TAM or throughout the mountain, and you already know and have a sense that you don't wait for that order. When an evacuation warning comes in, you get down from the mountain. So to be clear to those of us like myself who live in the flats of Horse Hill, evacuation orders are not guidelines. They are designed to immediately get people out of their homes and relocated to a safer area. As a block captain, we message our residents to be prepared on red flag days, to know 2 ways out of their home. And if you can, leave early during an evacuation warning. So what does evacuation look like in Mill Valley neighborhoods that often only have 1 way in and 1 way out? Block captains point residents to information about community refuge areas or safe spaces in your neighborhood that you can relocate to during an evacuation order. Community refuge areas will keep you safe and are part of the response plan to help us free up the roads and allow emergency response crews to access the area for quicker response. You may hear this called a few other things, CRAs. Southern Marin in the fire department, we call them community refuge areas. For example, we have the community center, Mill Valley Community Center. We have Edna McGuire School, Boyle Park and the golf course. We have Tam Valley School. We have Mount Tamalpais School. If your neighborhood doesn't have a CRA, go ahead and check on our website. We've located and listed all the CRAs. Look for open spaces with less fuel. You want to find some concrete, such as Good Earth Shopping Center. And remember, wear your N95 mask to block out those fire particulates, and bring your go bag with enough food and water and other necessities to get you through the boredom of being in a CRA. Lastly, in an evacuation, you may not be able to return to your home. So we really hope as block captains that you encourage and you build into your resident plan and their family plan what they're going to do and how they are going to connect outside of their home. So they understand they need to determine a meetup place outside of the neighborhood. Maybe you've identified a CRA that you're going to meet up at. Just have a plan for your family to connect, and have a plan for your family that's out of area to reconnect with you. Again, there's no official role of a block captain in an evacuation, but we do hope that you would encourage your clusters as part of their family plan to also use and place that OK help sign in the windows during an evacuation, so that our block captain program can continue to move towards that NRG command post communication. Go ahead, Bob, next slide, please. So not all NRGs have built out the structure that I just mentioned about the radio testing and command posts. At first, I really want you to focus on the block captains program and growing those clusters and that response. But we are here to facilitate your program as you continue to grow it. So we're going to talk about block captains and what this looks like during COVID and under social distancing considerations. Obviously, we're not going to ask any block captain to engage with their community, engage with their neighbors if they themselves feel unsafe. So remember, when you're engaging with your neighbors, keep your social distance. You can see this picture. The block captain here actually has a mask on. They're 6 feet social distance, but they're still able to provide that education, that information, and that personal community touch, which often feels lost in the Zoom world. But the pandemic has taught us to be flexible. So we really encourage you to get involved in a level that you feel comfortable with, that your co-captain who's helping you manage the clusters feel comfortable with, and that really meets the needs and the dynamic nature of your neighborhood. So we get to learn from each other about these shared best practices. I will just quickly rattle off 3 or 4 examples that you can use, and then I would like to pass it over to a guest speaker to share his personal experiences of what it's been like being a block captain under COVID. So really, part of these things you can do as a block captain to engage your neighborhood and your clusters. You can host a Zoom meeting, invite your cluster to attend. Everyone's all in the same place. You have a captive audience just like I have now. You guys are stuck with me until I pass it off to our next speaker. You can invite a speaker from Fire Safe Marin, from the Southern Marin Fire Department. We have some really highly qualified, highly engaging speakers that you have access to, and hearing firsthand accounts of the North Bay fires from folks who are fighting it, and then coming back and sharing their lessons learned. And it re-solidifies the importance of this group, of what we're doing, what we're working to achieve, so that we can take the burden off of our first responders so that they can respond to the most critical needs. You can show a webinar. There are some great films, short films, 7-minute films from Fire Safe Marin. Their website has a YouTube channel. I highly recommend that you check out a series from Peter Coyote. You can create a whole Zoom film screening event, or you can host your social distance, meet your block captain scenario, just like Timothy, I'm gonna butcher your last name, sorry, Timothy Levesque. He lives in Horse Hill, Alto Sutton, which is in my neighborhood. And I'd like to kick it off to him to share his experiences as in the Meet Your Block Captain program. Tim, are you still there? Are we able to see? apologize. I'm pulling you up right now.
Tim is here, but he's muted.
Okay.
Bob, can you unmute Tim? Maybe I can, I can unmute. No, it's not working.
Maybe Tim,
Unmute.
check to see
Ah,
if you're.
there we
I'm
go.
muted.
There you are.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
You can hear me? Ashley, can you hear me?
I can. Yes.
Okay. Can you see me?
Yes.
Okay. Well, my name is Tim Levesque, and I live at 4 Somerset Lane. Myself and Kimberly Hobson, and she also lives on Somerset. We are the block captains for our 27 homes on our block. Somerset is in the Alto Sutton Manor area, and it's flat. So from a standpoint of going from house to house, it's quite easily. Kimberly and I got together about 2 months ago, maybe about 2 months, back in, well, August, first part of August, on a Saturday, and tried to come up with a plan on how we would contact all our neighbors to let them know that we'd like to meet with them and talk to them and have them fill out a household information form. So on Saturday morning we met, and Kim's daughter, who is responsible for hours, community hours, she gave her daughter the responsibility of putting together a flyer that we had that she made up. It was 1 page to let them know just the highlights of what we're doing, why we're doing it, and who we are. We also had our block captain cards and handouts we've been given from the folks in the fire department. And we also had some plastic see-through bags that you could hang on a doorknob. So we thought we would put this on each doorknob that afternoon by her daughter and her friend, and let them know that the following Wednesday evening between 5 and 7, we'd be coming around the neighborhood and getting information from people. And so we did. That following Wednesday evening, we started around 5 o'clock near Pam's house, and we went to each house and spoke to the people, asked them if they'd read the information. They all said they had. And we informed them that we were the block captains, and what we wanted to get from them was their name, which we didn't always have. We had their address. We wanted their phone number and their email. And the reason we wanted is we're trying to get to know them, and also we're trying to build a database by which if there's an emergency, we can contact them, whether it be an earthquake, a flood, or a fire. And that they would fill out this 1-page form, and automatically it would go to Cindy Wiki, who's our coordinator for our large neighborhood. It took us about 2 hours. We saw everyone except 3. We went back to those, and one household still hasn't responded to us. In any case, once we got all that information, once again, Kimberly let her young daughter do some hours, and she inputted all the data and sent out the information to all the households. The first go around, we got 10. We got 10 responses out of 27, and the information went to Cindy. We now have
Tim, we lost you.
Bob, do you have me?
What's going on?
They don't have me and they can't see me.
We can hear you, Tim.
Oh, okay.
There we go. We see you.
The end result was neither one of us ever done this before, and we both met neighbors we didn't know, which was nice. And we have some new neighbors, and they did respond. Everyone, as I said, indicated they had read all the information beforehand, and a little more than 50% have given us the information. We were a little disappointed we didn't get more, but Cindy seemed to think that was okay. We're going to go back to, again, with our red jackets on and our hats and our masks, and knock on the doors and ask the people who have not responded if they would like to respond. If they don't want to respond, then obviously that's their choice. But the reason why we want them to respond is if there is an emergency, we can either email them or we can call them. The email may be down, but we do have cell phones of which we call
I lost Tim again. Did anybody?
I'm not. Tim? It's possible he's frozen.
I
I
think
can
we've
hear-
all lost
Oh,
Tim.
there. Right, you back? There you are.
Okay.
Okay.
In any case, the household information form is only several pages. And some of the things that Pam had talked about earlier is the information we're gathering. We want their name, address, their phone numbers, their email address, if they have children, the ages of the children, if they have pets, and if they have anybody in the household who's disabled, and if they have any skill sets or equipment that can be used if we need to evacuate or need to get help, such as a generator, ladders, and so on. And the last thing we did was gave them the help and okay sign. And we're going to let them know that if they get contacted from anyone from our units that there's an emergency or we want to just practice, they are to either put out the okay or the help sign. We do have 2 residents in our neighborhood who need wheelchairs or walkers. And so we've got them keyed in that we want them to put that they need some help to be evacuated. So that's it. Kim and I took our first block captain class, if you wish, last January. And then we had a subsequent one prior to the coronavirus. And then we went out and we got all the goods that we needed from Cynthia, including our little red jackets or vests and all the handouts we need. And she had calling cards for all this. So that's my story.
Thank you, Tim, for sharing.
Okay.
We really appreciate hearing a firsthand account. And again, if anybody who's listening has questions, feel free to email directly myself or use our NRG millvalley.org website. We have a way that we can send information and messaging, and we can connect each other. Really, the whole point of this orientation is to learn that we're not working in silos, we're working together, but in our own neighborhoods and really leaning on each other and having those best practices. Next slide, please.
Okay. Thank you very much. I have to go. I've got some house guests and I'm supposed to be doing the barbecuing.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for joining us.
Okay.
Thanks, Tim.
So here's an example of that resident information card. This is a picture of what you can download from our NRG Mill Valley website. But I just want to actually go right into the next slide since most of you are coming from TAM, and I just want to show you the difference. Every NRG kind of has their own form. The importance is that we're collecting this basic information, and I'll actually work on the bottom up here. If a block captain or our neighbors do not know about a particular household, if they're vulnerable, what their needs are, if they need assistance in an emergency, then those homes may be overlooked in the emergency. So this is why having some basic household information about a family member, including their pets, their children, if they require assistance or they think they require assistance, it's what helps the block captains and that communication flow of information be more streamlined, and it enables CERT and our command posts to really focus in on what the need is in the neighborhood so that we can respond appropriately in an emergency. I won't go too deep into the dive on these forms since I'm not quite familiar. One thing I will point out is that the information is not stored in a major database. We're not sharing your personal information out. The resident card information and what you provide to your block captain is really intended for your block captain. And we're not trying to share this information out widely. We just want some really basic stuff for our incident command to understand your name, your location, and how many members are in your family, just so that we really know how many folks to expect in the house during an emergency. Predominantly, we're there to help flag those vulnerable community members who are going to need greater assistance. So moving on to the next slide. Oh, before I forget, I just have a note here. It says from my script, you need to find out who lives at which address and who may need help in case of the power outage or evacuation or emergency. And really the part that I forgot was who in the neighborhood who can provide assistance. Part of that getting to know you and that community bond is that we're looking for individuals. As a block captain, we're looking to identify who are already trained as CERT members, who are already first responders, who has chainsaws if there are down fallen trees. And remember, if there's no power, are they electric chainsaws or are they gas powered? These things are really important for the resiliency of your neighborhood, of knowing who can help and who needs help. So what else can you do? Oh my goodness, what do I have here? CERT. We discussed a little bit about CERT. CERT was the community emergency response training. Right now there are hybrid classes that are in the works because of COVID. It's a 20-hour program. They're trying to figure out some dates. You're going to be able to find that information either on our website or via Ready Marin when they launch those dates. First aid training, that's the FADER course that I mentioned. We also have in Mill Valley the Emergency Preparedness Commission. I myself am a EPC commissioner representing Southern Marin, so I'm part of the county. And that is a wonderful commission through the city of Mill Valley. And there's a lot of wonderful resources and information and access to tools that you can engage with on that website. So really, let's just go into the next steps, which are your resources, so that you know that you're not alone in crafting this program. We have not only excellent trainers like Maggie Lang that we've been relying on, as well as programs outside of Southern Marin, like the Central Marin programs that have been doing this for a lot longer than we have. And we get to learn from each other and lean on each other and really work out those best practices. So next slide, please. Talk about some of these resources in the little bit of time we have left. So again, I mentioned the city of Mill Valley. Given that TAM, you guys are unincorporated, just like my home is, I would also point you to the Southern Marin Fire District. There's some great resources on their website. And really just even your senator, Mark McGuire, has a town hall tonight. He's starting to really focus and address, forgive me if you can hear my children screaming, starting to address some emergency preparedness and what that looks like in our communities. So check out the websites. I don't want to take up any more time. I want Bob to be able to briefly show you the wonderful website he's helped create. And every NRG has a page, so you get to make it unique to your community. And if you have different forms or different information that you are providing, you can do so. But really, the evergreen messaging, the fire preparedness, and what we're trying to engage our community with is all one and the same. So sign up for alerts, be prepared, have your go bag ready, don't be afraid to leave early. Red flag days are days that you check that you are prepared and you have your plan, and really just engage with one another. Keep yourself safe, keep your neighborhood safe, and thank you so much for attending today. Bob, it's all yours.
This is Bob. I will give you a very brief tour of the website. Everyone's homework is to go to the website and really see what's available here for you. We consolidated a lot of information to make it easy for you. Someone earlier on, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Very good. Early on, someone in chat asked about, is there going to be, or when is the next block captain radio communication class? And this was just put up today. This is a calendar page from our website, and one of the sidebars on every page lists the upcoming dates. This is tonight's meeting. We have 2 other block captain orientations scheduled for the rest of the year, and we have more living room chats that are going to happen pretty soon. Maggie may brief us on that pretty soon. On all of our events and links that we send out, we're going to really try to send out the link from a page on this website because we want people to become familiar with it. So instead of sending the Zoom link directly to this workshop, we will send everyone this page here. Then all our Zoom meetings require pre-registration, and the link is at the bottom here. Our NRGs, you may be a little confused about them. It's the 94941 zip code school district area, which includes Strawberry, and it includes about 35,000 people. We have, and this is the front page of our website, we have approximately 14 NRGs, and that includes Tam Valley and Homestead Valley and the others in Strawberry on this side here. Most web pages, and this clearly shows these are live maps, and you could zoom in on them and see where your particular house is. Most websites has an About Us section that tells you, the viewers, what we are, but we are nothing without the second half of the equation, which is block captains, which are residents that volunteer to help us out. So we've emphasized even more the About You page on our website, about you, the shelter in place, fire safety, evacuation, and the public safety power shutoff program. And there's a checklist on there about the things you may want to have handy. On these Mill Valley NRG drop-down page here, we are probably going to do blog posts instead of newsletters. This explains what NRGs are. Each NRG has the opportunity to put custom information about their NRG on one page on this website. Some have not even started. Some, like Scott Valley, I just helped last week set up their page, and Courtney did a wonderful job in doing a live Google map of there, and the steering committee is listed here. Alto Sutton, where I live, was one of the first. Since I was a webmaster, that was one of the reasons there. And we have our picture and steering committee and links to emails to contact us and get us on contact list. And these are our blocks in our NRG. Color coded, you could see red means we have no block captains yet, so we have a lot of work to do. This is an address lookup, and we encourage NRGs or steering committees to send us blog post for information so we could share it. We could just have blog posts for just your NRG page or for the community at whole. And Tam Valley is becoming a very organized page, as you can see here with their, here's the recorded living room chat we had last week, and we put it up on their page as a recorded YouTube thing. This is their map of NRG/clusters. These are all the areas, and someone is working on wonderful live maps for each area, and we will make a link to that map on the title here. Additional resources could be found under training and events. This is where our calendar is that lists everything. Response plan for new NRGs, get ready, all sorts of information, more resources, our community partners. Some are listed here as well. Fire Safe Marin, a wonderful program that helps you get rid of fire material right next to your home. It is all about, mostly about embers flying next to your house, dropping to the ground, and within 5 feet, starting flammable leaves or plants on fire, and then that is what starts your house on fire. So if you remove flammable plants and keep it clean within 5 feet, you're halfway to being protected. Videos, I have a couple of videos on there already. These are the news posts from everyone. Maggie is organizing the new CERT training things, and a contact page to get a hold of us. So that's in a nutshell. Your homework is to check out the website, and I will test you the next time I see you.
Thank you so much, Bob. Again, we do want to respect your time. It is 1 minute before 7. I know we've given you an awful lot of information. We've all been talking very quickly, and we know that it's a lot to hear, and you're going to hear it again and again and again. Don't feel that you have to have memorized everything that you heard tonight. This is a process, and like Ashley said, there's a lot of practice involved. It's hearing the same thing over and over again. It's trying things out. And please know that we're so grateful to every single one of you who is on this Zoom tonight. You have stepped up. You have, in the midst of a very difficult time, you have said, I want to do something for my community. And that means so much. And we are so appreciative. So there will be more. I know we may not have gotten to every single question in the chat, but we will follow up with you. Hopefully we have everyone's email address from your registration. And we look forward to being able to talk with you more and work together going forward. So thank you so much, everyone. Take care, be safe.
The meeting is officially over, but if you'd like to stay on, we will continue to answer questions. And there are a couple here on the chat that might need clarification. And should we keep recording for these questions, Pam?
Yeah, let's keep recording, Bob. Thank you.
All right. Well, in regard to size and organization, in regard to maybe NRG Marin could combine with NRG Mill Valley or vice versa, everything is about scale and size. And our working unit is a block captain with 10 to 20 homes. If a 10 or 20 home block doesn't have a block captain, except for the resources they could read onto the website, you really are not participating in the program. And the blocks that do have block captains with radios will be in contact in those times with no power, no cell service with the command post. And if someone has a broken arm in one of our NRG blocks, they may get attention to someone that is not connected in a block who has a cardiac arrest or anything, because there's no communication or something. So our most critical thing, your real homework, is to talk to your friends and parents at schools and the people at the coffee shop and tell them about our program, and that only at best 33% of the residents in Mill Valley are connected in any way with any of these programs.
We have a question about radio trainings. Will there be multiple training sessions?
I would think there would have to be. In the picture I showed you a particular version of a radio. We checked with the emergency people and the search and rescue people and the ham radio people here in Alto Sutton, and they all agreed that this is a wonderful radio price to value to it. It's $70 for a pair, this particular model, and it would make sense that we use the same model for everyone, so that during the emergency, if someone says, how do I do this with this radio, everyone will know what they're talking about. So that's pretty critical, and we if we get some funding, may buy multiple quantities of the same radios. So that makes sense. Maggie, do you have anything else to say about the radios?
Well, just that the funding is, of course, kind of up in the air situation right now. We were going to ask the city for some funding, but then COVID hit. So that eliminates some sources. We did get a great start from a grant from the Outdoor Art Club, which was wonderful. And that helped to supply some of our very early blocks that got organized. So I think, to be perfectly honest, I think what we will end up leading towards is neighborhoods chipping in a little bit, because the expense is not great. For a block captain, it's probably about $80 for them to get the supplies they need. So if everybody chips in $10, that's already, even more than you'd need to supply your block captains. So there'll be an organized, once we're looking into finishing the connection to a 501c3, so we can have a fiscal agent for the NRGs, which is great. Thank you, Pam, for helping us with that. And so our fire chiefs are working on the details, and as soon as we have it, we'll send out that with a promotion, so that we do currently have a donation button on the NRG Mill Valley website, and as soon as we have that connection, it will become live. And at that point, you can indicate where you want your donation to go to. I'd like my donation to go to Cascade Canyon or Scott Valley or Tam Valley. And so that would make sure that it is notified. The leaders in that group, the steering committee in that group, would then have access to those funds. So, well, we can put up the Midland information. You can get them from a website. If people want to order their own, that's great, as long as we're really encouraging everybody to get the same one, because they're highly recommended, they're easy to use, and it just makes it easier in our training. Now, you asked about training. We have one coming up in a couple of weeks with Brian Cooley. He's a ham radio operator. He gave one to the CERTs about 6 weeks ago, something like that. It was fabulous. So we asked him if he would be willing to do that again, and we will record it. So that will be access on the website. And Bob, I just wanted to ask a quick question. This session tonight, which by the way, guys, great job. It is recorded. How can everybody access that if they would like to listen again?
I could put it on the webpage tomorrow.
That'd be great. And which section will it be under?
It will probably be under the general video page, but
Okay.
if Pam would like it on your page, I don't know what percentage of participants were from Tam Valley.
I have to look at the list.
We'll probably put it on a general page.
I think that's a great idea. Yeah. Okay,
Because
great.
I know we have Homestead and El Monte, and
We've got a few from Cascade Canyon.
yeah, yay, shout out. We have a couple of other questions were asked about radios. One was, sorry, it's moving. Does the radio also allow us to talk to the fire department?
No.
Nope.
I can answer that quickly, because I don't think the fire department would be able to manage hearing from potentially 1,000 residents. 911 is certainly there, but I think some of us worry about how effective that will be in a large-scale disaster. So this is sort of a backup plan to 911, where the block captains will be communicating with their command post. And for example, and Pam can talk about what the thoughts are in Tam Valley, but Scott Valley and Alto Sutton, the command post will be at Edna McGuire School. So we're actually meeting with the principal tomorrow morning to scope out where that command post would be set up, because it of course has to be away from any students who are there at the time. And then the command post would be filtering through the reports. So Alto Sutton, block 13, for example, everything's fine. So they would then, cross out block 13, they're doing okay. But block 24 has a couple of injuries, and here's the injuries, one of which is life-threatening. So that report automatically gets sent by radio, a different kind of radio, to the public safety building. So I think it's a great backup, which a lot of us are real excited about. So I'll put the information about the radios on the chat.
And then we have a couple of questions about radio channels, and I know that we're going through the mapping process right now for within city limits and Homestead and Tam Valley. So I assume that that is information that is forthcoming once that radio mapping process is complete.
And I could comment if you wish.
Yes. Oh, Rob, thank you. Here you are.
Yeah, so David and I are at the moment trying to work out how best to allocate channels for use in Tam Valley. And the 11 NRGs presumably could have their own radio channel as long as they don't conflict with the adjacent NRGs in classical Mill Valley. So our concern is obviously Homestead and probably down
towards the school area where we might end up not being able to reuse the channels. So that's what we're looking at right now.
One consideration is our Alto Sutton NRG is going to share the same resources at Edmond-Bogargo with Scott Valley. So the channels may start with the command post and trickle down rather than the other way. Is that true, Maggie?
Well, we're just working on that. There's several folks in Tam Valley who are radio people, and so we don't have channels set up yet. We're really, you know, we kind of remind ourselves, as Pam was saying, that Corte Madera has been doing this for 10 years. We just started in January. So the fact that we have done as much as we have and not even addressing COVID is really quite remarkable. So that we have had multiple block captain orientations and different trainings and even thought about the radios. I just commend everybody who's been working on it. So that is a work in progress. So hold everything about the channels. We'll get there. I think the first step is learning at least the basics of how to use the radio, and we'll be practicing in small areas and how to do messaging. And that's the one on the 14th. And then once COVID restrictions are over, we'll do what really is a lot of fun, which is get together and actually practice at distances so we can talk to each other. And that's a lot of fun. We also, the other thing, if any of you guys are interested, put it in the chat. We will be doing what's called radio mapping, and we've done it in Alto Sutton. Bob helped with that. And that's where you have someone at the command post, and then you have folks in cars who are driving around to see what the reception is. So Alto Sutton did great. We could talk to each other everywhere. But Cascade Canyon last week, we found some dead zones where we couldn't communicate. So we have to figure out what to do about that. But that's exactly why we did that. So that'll be happening all over town.
Maggie, do you or Bob happen to remember what Midland model it is?
I'm putting it up right now.
Okay.
And I'm looking for that too.
I've got it.
And while you're looking for that, we had a question about privacy of people's personal information. And great question. It's something that actually we talk about a lot. And to me, the number one thing to bear in mind is that this is all elective. And you may have someone in your cluster who, like you noticed, Tim said they had someone who hasn't responded to them. You may have someone who just doesn't want to be involved in this, and that's fine. This is all, you know, we make our own decisions about what we want to do. And you may have someone who says, well, you know, I'm willing to give you this information, but I don't want to tell you the names of my pets or whatever. And that's fine too. You know, our premise is no one gets left behind. And in an emergency, the more information we have, the better. But you know, we're still going to help our neighbors, right? So we want to be very sensitive to and respectful of people's comfort level with giving out their information. The next thing to know is that we all made decisions at the ground level that this is a grassroots concern, and we really want to keep the primary information at the block captain level. There's no reason that the steering committee needs to know how many pets you have or what ages your children are or anything like that, because the steering committee is not going to be on your street at the time of an emergency. That's something your block captain needs to know. And so you'll see that the different forms, it's different levels of information as far as what's really relevant to whether it's the steering committee getting the information or whether it's your block captain. But overall, I think we're all sensitive, everyone here, we're all sensitive to personal data and the things, you know, this is a weird world that we live in. And so we want to balance getting as much information as people are comfortable giving so that we can be helpful and not ever making anyone feel uncomfortable or insecure about the information they're sharing.
Maggie?
Yep.
The radio model that you put down is different than what we had in our hand and ours. It's the GTX 1000 VP4. Ryan asked if that was the one. Maybe they changed models since then.
Yeah, I actually have the radio in my hand, and that's what it says on the back, GXT 1000G. But we'll look into that, guys, so
Yes.
that we've got everybody's contact information. If there's anything different, we'll send it out.
And we'll
They
put
do
them,
carry them at REI, and you can get them on what is it? I'll put the website, buy twowayradios.com. Anyway, we'll find the website and send that out.
And I can send you the Amazon link as well if you want, Bob.
okay.
Thank you.
We also had a question about, as somebody asked, they have people on their street who don't use a computer, and how do we deal with printed materials? And so anything that you use, you can print. And I'll just tell you a quick story of how a block captain customized to the culture of her street. She actually printed everything out. She made chocolate chip cookies. She bagged each individually the cookies stapled to the printed information, and she delivered to every house. So it's, you know,
That's wonderful.
yeah, if you know people don't have a computer, that's okay. We work with what we have.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
and she actually got a lot of results. People were very responsive.
And at some point, we really should look at normal and power and cell and computers and all that, and trickle down to what if. We should really base our whole program on not having any of that, because when the big earthquake comes, we may not have power or cell service for weeks.
Yeah, and that's a
And
great, you know, Bob,
everything is by hand and manual.
great piece of advice. The basic information that you have for the people in your cluster, print it out, put it in the backpack that you're going to use for an emergency, put it in your go kit, wherever, because as Bob says, you know, your phone may be useless to you. You may not be able to access any data at all. And so it's good to have that old school backup.
So
And
my only
hopefully-
comment here from, excuse me, Pam, from Rob is
gonna
just to make sure that this is the same model of Midland. This is a 1030 or 1030 VPA. The website is great because you can order a lot of different ones on there. But Rob, that would be my only response here, is just to make sure it's the same, which we're really trying to get basically the same type of radio for everybody.
And one of the reasons, again, is let's say at an online training thing, you could have 30 people with 5 different radios, and half the meeting time would be used in figuring out where the right buttons are on the different radios. So consistency is important.
Maggie, are you referring to the link I just sent?
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay. Well, that's what I bought. The Amazon links are difficult to understand, as you know. So, but that's definitely the right radio.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay.
Just for those who are interested, the main reason why this radio is so good is because it also takes AA disposable batteries.
Oh.
If you can't charge anything, at least you've probably got some AA's you can throw in the back of the radio when it runs out.
Yeah, that's critical.
So we're recommending, I put this in the chat, at this point, one radio for each team. At least there's one, only because of financing. If we had unlimited funds, we would have all kinds of wonderful things we could give each block captain. But the very basics are, we want block captains to have an identifier vest, a clipboard they can put their forms on. We'd love to have a utility shutoff that each block captain team has, because we want people to work together as a team. Block captains don't work by themselves. So your co-block captain should be someone not in your own family, because obviously if you travel, you probably travel with your family. And so somebody that's a neighbor that would be your co-block captain is ideal. And then, so those are the sort of the guidelines, and that each team has at least one radio. And we may well be the kind of situation where we're headed. We just haven't really had a lot of chance to investigate all this yet. Is that fundraising may be where we arrive at, which is great. We'll let you know as soon as we get the final details. Well, looks like somebody just ordered the radio. All right.
With that, I think we're at about 20 after. We will go through the chat. If your question wasn't answered, we will definitely follow up with you. So don't worry. And thank you so much to all of you who took the extra time and stayed on to ask these questions. We really appreciate it.
Thank you,
All
everybody.
right.
Peyton, I see you. Nice to see you.
Yeah, it's good to
Peyton's one of our newest block captains in Cascade Canyon. We are delighted to see you.